Hi, and welcome back to week 4, day 2, representing data in ScatterPlots. We will still continue to cover SOL 8.13, where we're representing data in ScatterPlots. We will collect, organize, and represent the data of no more than 20 items using ScatterPlots. On yesterday's independent practice and homework solutions, you were given 2 questions. The first question asks that you actually use the 6 sets of ordered pairs that were given to determine which ones were actually on the graph. The correct answer for this question should have been 3 and 5.5, 0 and 1.5, and 4 and 6. So if you're actually looking at the graph here, when we go across to 3 and you go up to 5.5, that one is located there. When you're here on the x-axis and you're at 0, you can go up to 1.5 and it is there. If you look at point 4.5, which is right here, and you're looking at it to be a point at 3, you notice that there's not one here. So 3, that one is not an answer choice. When you go back to 4 and go up to 6, that is in fact an answer choice. 2.5 is right here. When you go up to 1, there is not a blue dot there, so that is not an answer choice. When your last option was 2 and 3.5, 2 is right here. When you go up to 3.5, you do not see a dot there, so therefore that one is not an answer choice. And looking at the second question where you were given beef prices, the second diagram actually was the correct answer for that one. If you were to look at all the options that were given here, such as option where you have the pounds of beef, right here, your first one was at 9 pounds. And according to this graph, it says the price per pound should have been $10 according to this graph. When on the table, it says it should be $3.75. So if you go right on the second graph and you go up, that is where it's correctly monitored. So you can look at the first point and to determine that one as well to make it a little bit easier. But yes, graph 2 was the correct graph of the data given for your homework solution. Today's objective: I can construct a scatter plot given the data on a graph paper and identify data points in a given scatter plot. Materials needed are paper, preferably graph paper, and a pencil. In reviewing the vocabulary terms, they are as follow: independent variable, dependent variable, line of best fit, positive relationship, negative relationship, and no relationship. The pictorial representation that were shared with you on yesterday are also shared with you again today. When it's a positive linear relationship, the x-coordinate and the y-coordinate are both increasing, therefore giving you a positive linear relationship. When your x-coordinate is increasing, but that of your y-coordinate is decreasing, giving you a downward trend, that is considered a negative linear relationship. When there is no direct correlation between the x and y coordinates, that is considered no correlation, therefore that's no linear relationship.
Hello and welcome to My Secret Math Tutor. In this video I want to show you how to make a scatter plot. So these are really great types of plots that we can use to help see relationships in our data. To be a little bit more specific, in a scatter plot we use these to show a relationship between two variables. Now usually a symbol, usually a dot, is used to show an individual pair of data. Let's look at some other terms that are also used when describing these scatter plots. We'll take the data and take both of our variables and represent them along both of these axes here. On the bottom one, we call this our x-axis. This is where we'll display our independent variable. Along the other line, our y-axis, we'll display the second variable. We'll call this our dependent variable. Now you might be curious, like, how on earth do we know which one's the dependent variable? How do we know which one is the independent variable? Well, think of it this way. The dependent variable will change as a result of what the independent variable is doing. And when we get to my example, you'll probably be able to more clearly see which one is depending on the other one's value. All right, let's give it a try. So we want to create a scatter plot for the following data. And this chart or table here just represents the hours of studying and a particular exam score that some students had. So which one of these would depend on the other one? Well, we would think that whatever exam score they got probably depended on the hours of studying. So we will say that the hours of study are independent and the exam scores are dependent. There we go. Now it's also important to mark out a scale so we can put all of these data values in here. And looking at the hours of study, it looks like somewhere between 0 and 10 hours is probably good. So let's mark off 10 little tick marks. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Zero, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oops, got an extra one. 10. All right, along the other side, this is where our exam scores will go. Let's just do 0 to 100. So 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. Okay, looks good. Now the way this works is we want to put a data point at the intersection of hours and scores so that that one point represents a pair of data. Let's start off with the first one. So we want to put 2 hours of studying and a score of 53. So we'll first find the hours of studying. There's our 2. And we'll put a dot where it intersects 53. So just a little bit above the value of 53. Okay, not bad. Let's do this again. So we got 4.5 for 35. So 4.5 halfway between up to 10, 20, 30 and a half. Not bad. Okay. Up to 5. 5 needs to go all the way up to 91. So way up here. Let's keep going. We also have 5, which is at 72. Let's see. So 50, 60, 72. Notice how we get 2 values of both for 5, and that's okay. Sometimes that can happen with these scattered. Let's see, 6, we need a dot at 60. 3, we need one at 62. Let's see, 10. Over here, we need one at 85. There's 50. 60, 70, 80, halfway, 85. Let's see, 9.5, so halfway between these two. This one's going up to 78. So 50, 60, 70, almost 80, but not quite. Let's see, one more. 8, oh, they almost got a perfect score. 99, way near here at the top. So the advantage of having something like a scatter plot to see all of your data points is you can start to see if there's possibly relationships among these two different variables. And if I was looking at this and if it was real data, I might expect that maybe exam scores are really have a strong relationship with the hours of studying. Maybe the more we study, the higher our scores are. Now if this is our data, then actually looking at it, maybe I'm not convinced that these two things are really related, because the people who are studying a lot aren't really scoring a whole lot better than some people who only scored a little bit. They're still actually scoring pretty good. But it's a nice visual way that we can see those relationships and get a sense of what is happening between those two variables. All right. If you'd like to see some more videos, please visit mysecretmathtutor.com.
And that was your instructional video for today. If you need to replay it, please do so at your leisure. We will now move on to our independent practice for today. All right, here's your first example. The table shows the relationship between the outside temperature and the number of customers who came into the Dairy Grind coffee shop in one day. Using this data, construct a scatter plot using the data in the table. So we ask that you pause the video at this time, take a moment to construct the scatter plot, and then come back and press play when you're ready so that we can go over this example with you. Welcome back.
Looking at example 1 that you are given, the problem says that the table shows the relationship between the outside temperature and the number of customers who came to the Daily Grind coffee shop in one day. So I copied down our temperatures here, they're in degrees, and our number of customers here. I went ahead and created the axes for the scatter plot. There are a couple of things that you'll notice. First of all, I've labeled my axes, so down here, each one of these numbers represents the temperature, and along my y-axis here, this represents the number of customers. These little squiggly zigzag lines, this tells you that you're skipping a significant amount of numbers up until you're getting there. So instead of starting at 0 and counting the 10s, 20s, 30s up before 40, I just did that. Your axes may look completely different. As long as your points are plotted with the same numbers, it is perfect. So looking at our temperature and customers, when it's 40 degrees outside, there were 285 customers. So you'll notice here I skip counted my lines, and then every other was an extra 50. So this would be 100 right in here, and between the 100 and 150, this would be 125. So if I have 285 customers, this would be 275. So it's going to be just a little bit above that, floating on that line there at the 40 degrees. 50 degrees, there were 225. So my 50 would be in between the 40 and 60 down here, all the way up to 225 customers. 60 degrees was 170, so that would be just below that middle line there, because that would have been 175. So we're going to put it just below that line. 70 degrees was 155, which is pretty close, just a little bit closer to that 150. 80 degrees was 124, so this line would be 125, so it's going to be just below that. And then finally my 90 degrees was 96 people. So it's going to be just below that 100. So your scatter plot should, the shape should look like this, and your points should all be on the same rough numbers. But again, your axes maybe have different amounts of space skipped in between each one.
Now, you are now ready for example number 2. It says a history teacher asked her students how many hours of sleep they had the night before a test. The data shows the number of hours the students slept and their scores on the exam. We ask that you please plot the data on a scatter plot. So please pause the video at this point, plot your data, and then come back so that we can go over example number 2 with you.
Example 2 says, a history teacher asked her students how many hours of sleep they had on the night before a test. The data below shows the number of hours the students slept and their test score on the exam. Plot the data on the scatter plot. So you'll notice in the question online, it does have the table in a horizontal format. It's the exact same data. I just put it in a vertical table just so that it fit better on my page, but it's the exact same data. I went ahead and created my axes again. My x-axis is the number of hours slept. My y-axis is the test score. Even though nobody slept 1, 2, or 3 hours, I went ahead and put that in there just so that you can see that there, because my range for my x-axis was not very big. If you look at your test scores, it ranges from a 60 all the way up to a 90. So I did my squiggle again, started at 60. This would be 60, 65, 70, 75, 80, and all the way up to 100. Obviously up here, we're not going to have any data points, but just to finish off the graph and have it there. Again, if your axes are numbered differently, it's fine as long as your data points are plotted correctly and matched up there. Another thing that's different with this example is that my X values, or my hours slept, they're not in numerical order. So it's okay. It's just you're just gonna be bouncing back and forth to different hours across instead of going in order across the table. So looking at my first one, this person slept for 8 hours. I'm gonna go to my 8 hours, and they scored an 83 on the exam. So it's gonna be about halfway in between 80 and 85. So I'm gonna put my mark there. 7 hours, got an 86, so just above that 85 mark there. Another 7 hours, got a 74. So it's going to be just below that 75. 8 goes with 88, so here's another 8 hours, all the way up here just below that 90. 6 hours with 76 as the grade. It's going to be just above that 75 mark, which is right there. 5 hours, got a 63, so here's 5. I'm going to come down here halfway in between that 60 and 65 mark. 7 hours with a 90. That one should be pretty easy for you to plot. 4 hours with a 60. 9 hours with an 89. That person was very well rested. And then 7 hours with an 81. So here's 80, so put it about right there. These dots here are not obviously perfect about where they're placed. It's just more of an estimate so that you get more of an idea of where those numbers are located.
You are now ready to complete your practice and homework problems. Please see the following 2 questions. The first one says, which table shows the data that is displayed in the scatter plot? So please read the 2 tables, figure out which data points have been plotted for the Chapter 8 test grades. Number 2 says, write down all coordinate points that make up the data set represented in the scatter plot. So you're writing coordinate points for your X and Y coordinates for all of the points plotted in this data set. Please pause the video and take a moment to answer your practice/homework problem. As always, we ask that you please log on to Dreambox at this time to complete at least one lesson. Remember, Dreambox is located in your Clever account. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to being with you tomorrow.